Good morning. Good morning. How is everybody today? Welcome to TGI Sports Talks College Football, now sports basketball, really, Huddle. We'll talk about all of that. I'm Keith Engel, your host. Good to have you with me. Usually we're here on Wednesday nights, and this is a replay of that show on Northeast Streaming Sports Roku channel, but we're live this morning, so you'll get to see some live comments if you're watching there. And if you're not, get that downloaded. But we'll welcome everybody watching on TGI Sports Talk today on Facebook or YouTube. We welcome everybody as we talk about a Northeast Streaming Sports, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, or the Roku app where we're live today. Unfortunately, you can't comment on Roku, so if you plan on doing that, you would not be able to do so. Also, everybody watching on Let's Talk Sports on their YouTube channel, we welcome them. And guys, great content on both, besides the TGI Sports Talk content, right, which you all know very well, obviously. Northeast Streaming Sports and Let's Talk Sports, great content all day long, basically, and all week long on all of these shows. Also, thumbs up, DDH, and little plug. Tomorrow we'll be live with Northeast Streaming Sports on Northeast Streaming Sports and Let's Talk Sports and TGI Sports Talk with our Sunday Stream of Consciousness. And Jim Beringer will join us for a little hockey update. We'll talk baseball, we'll talk football, college football, NFL football. A lot of NFL football tomorrow. Today, we got college football to talk about. We'll get into college basketball a little more again. We'll be getting into a little more college basketball each week. Sorry for the pixelation on my headset. It's very difficult. I don't understand what that's about. But anyway, today we'll look at the bowl games to date. Not a lot to get excited about. I am 2 for 2 in the bets and betting on college football, but you got to be very choosy because guys out and whatnot. And too many bowl games. 40 bowl games, guys. A lot of these games are watchable. A couple good games today, which we'll talk about. In the news, we've got FSU suing the ACC, most likely, about the strict and rigorous leaving the conference rules. Expensive, really. Read into that, expensive. We'll talk a little bit about Mac Jones being mad about some things Coach Dorian said up from North Carolina State after their matchup, which is still getting him angry. A little bit about the recruiting classes, and we'll dive into the transfer portal as well. James Madison, we'll talk about their rise in both basketball and football. It's been a great year for James Madison. We'll talk about their basketball program when we get into the basketball side as well. We'll look at the poll. James Madison's in that poll, and it's kind of built. Their pre-conference schedule is in a gauntlet, let's just say. We'll look at some of the coaches in trouble. Kenny Payne gets the dreaded vote of confidence at Louisville, where I think he's won 6 out of 40 games or something like that. It's just been atrocious. Some teams have started conference play, the Pac-10, the ACC, the Big East, the WAC, Metro, Horizon. Not much, but at least we get into some conference play and we'll start to learn some things about these teams. And we'll look again at some prizes. And by the way, quick shout out, we'll mention again later in the show, but our TGI Sports Talk, rest in peace, and our thoughts and prayers are with the family, the friends and family of Eric Montrose, former standout at North Carolina, played in the pros for quite some time. I think he did some announcing as well for North Carolina, but he passed away this past week at 52 years old from after a battle with cancer. So our thoughts and prayers go out to the Montrose family as well. And we'll talk about any of your comments. Again, we get to Saturday morning. It's hard to say how big the crowd will be because we're not at our normal time. But anybody who does join us, hopefully you do. You say good morning and bring your topics, whether it be football. We're going to start with football, but we can go back and forth as needed. So we can chat college football and college basketball as we go through today. If you have other comments, obviously hold them till tomorrow. Good morning, Rick. Good to have you with us. Rick Sherlock up there in Amsterdam, New York. Our resident Georgia Bulldog fan. Listen, I got to tell you, I started talking about FSU suing the ACC. They've had a mass exodus of players. This Orange Bowl matchup is not looking appealing. And again, it's not good. I think Georgia's going to blow them out because they've lost their best players on both sides. We all know about the injury to their quarterback, which may or may not have left them out. I'm not convinced even if Jordan Travis wasn't hurt, FSU would have gotten in this playoff. Wrongfully so, by the way. But now they've had a mass exodus of some of their top players on both sides of the football. And this Georgia game is looking more and more like a mismatch. And the line's only going to go up. So if you haven't bet it yet, I'd bet it now. But again, that's not going to skew my decision. I mean, you can't let that skew your opinion on whether they belong in a playoff or not. So again, we've got a decent playoff to look at. So we'll continue to talk about that as need be. I like the matchups in Michigan and Alabama, Washington and Texas. I think they'll be fun. I think they'll be close. And I still, right now, I'm picking Washington to win. I know that's not a popular pick, but something about the team, it's resilient. Just something I like about all of these teams, right? Michigan, they've got the storyline of, and by the way, we'll probably get into the NCAA notifying Michigan of level 1 violations against Harbaugh. More evidence he'll probably get out in front of the posse and head to the NFL, by the way. There's a good storyline there with the Harbaugh story. Whether that's a good storyline is debatable. But even on the football field, great running offense against an improving Alabama defense. J.J. McCarthy throwing the football maybe against a suspect Alabama secondary. The Alabama team itself, the bad start, the tremendous finish and turnaround, and getting better pretty much as the year went on, except for maybe that Auburn game. Great coaching job by Nick Saban. You've got Texas back in the spotlight after decades almost, outside of it. And, of course, Washington, who's been very resilient all year. They're undefeated, guys. Don't forget this. Don't discount this Washington team because you don't think they play enough defense. The defense isn't as good as some of the other defenses. They're not as good as Michigan. They're certainly not as good as Alabama defensively. But they have come up and made big stops when they have to in the big games that they've played in. They've been very resilient. They've been on the cusp of losing a couple of times to teams they shouldn't have. But, arguably they've got two of the best wins in this Final Four against Oregon. Obviously, Alabama's got a great win against Georgia. Texas has a great win against Alabama. Michigan has a great win against Ohio State. I guess you could say a great win against Penn State, but they always lose to them. So, it's just, there's going to be a lot of, I think it's going to be it's going to be a very interesting day come New Year's Day, watching these games. And I'm excited about seeing those two games, and they're at a reasonable time, and they're a day where people will be in most likely and watching games, not New Year's Eve. And I think the television ratings will be better than they've been in the past myself, just because of when these games will be played. Some other news around the ACC around football that we can talk about. And we'll talk about, then we'll get into the bowl games that have been played and talk about those a little bit. Transfer portal, as I said, some interesting moves. One of those transfer items that we talked about last week, and I like it a lot. I know one of our big Notre Dame fans here on the show is not a big fan of Riley Leonard going to Notre Dame from Duke. I think he's going to be a great addition. If he stays healthy, he's a great dual quarterback, and they're bringing back to Notre Dame Denbrook, who was a former Notre Dame assistant under Brian Kelly, coached with Marcus Freeman at Cincinnati under Luke Fickell. He was an offensive coordinator while Marcus Freeman was the defensive coordinator. So they have a relationship. You saw what he did with Daniels this year, especially running the football. And Riley Leonard can run the football. I think this Notre Dame team is a team to really keep an eye on next year. If Riley Leonard works out, and I know I said the same thing. I know you're going to say, oh, you said the same thing about Sam Hartman. Totally different animals, these two. And the way college football seems to be playing today, Riley Leonard fits this mold better. And if they can get some athletes around him in the portal, in recruiting, they'll do well. Speaking of recruiting, by the way, it would appear that Georgia's one of the best teams so far. Right now, the recruiting wars are kind of being won by Georgia, Bama, Notre Dame, all teams we just talked about. And surprisingly, SMU right up there. So what other news do we have to talk about here today? We talked about Murphy. Malik Murphy transferring out of Texas could have great repercussions on Arch Manning if Cam Ewers has said he'll be back to Texas, but he has a big 2 games, 1 game, whatever, in the playoff. That could all change. And that would make Arch Manning the number 1 quarterback. And Arch Manning has said he's staying either way. We'll see how that works out. The rumors I heard yesterday, he's getting upwards of $3 million in NIL money. That will do a lot to keep him there. We talked about FSU suing the ACC over the exit fee and withdrawal fee, which is upwards of $130 million if they wanted to leave this conference. And they are not happy. We knew early in the year they weren't happy because of the feeling that they and Clemson really carry the water for the rest of the teams in this league, fairly or unfairly. Listen, Florida State's been as down as any of these teams the last decade for the most part. They won a national championship under Jimbo, I think in 2015 maybe. But other than that, since then, especially until the last year and a half, they have not played well. But they feel like, the television fees and whatnot are driven by themselves in Clemson, and they didn't feel it was being adequately rewarded. Now with the college football playoff decision, they feel like the ACC hurt them in that decision. I think the ACC and Florida State just got screwed here. But they probably have a point. The way the ACC is looked at is wrong, by the way, absolutely wrong. You can make an argument that the Big 12 is a worse league than the ACC top to bottom, especially this year. This was not a good league that Texas won. I'm sorry. All of these teams had flaws. The ACC had some good teams, also teams with flaws. Neither one of these teams is the SEC or the Big 10, not even the Pac-12 probably, at least this year. So they're gonna look to sue. And we talked about the fact that the state of Florida and Ron DeSantis had put aside, I think, $1 million, which again probably won't look like a lot of money going forward for legal defenses because of this football playoff snub. But I mean, they were never going to sue anybody about the snub specifically. I think that money now will probably get used in this legal battle with the ACC itself so they can get out. Now, the problem is, you say, fine, we want to get out of here, but where are you going to go? You got to have a place to land if you want to get out. I was looking, I thought I had seen something about that topic. I don't see it now, but it's all well and good to get out of the ACC, but somebody's got to want you, and it's got to be a better position than where they are now. They think, they'll be welcomed with open arms in the SEC. I don't know if that's true. It's just like having a job in real life, man. Don't quit a job without having another one. Don't sue your way out of the SEC without a commitment somewhere else if you get out. So that remains to be seen. And maybe that $1 million set aside by the state will come into play there. I don't know that the state ought to be funding this, but it is a state university. So it's in the state university system, so I can see where they might get involved. What else do we have going on here? We talked about Denbrook going back to Notre Dame. I think this will have a great effect. We'll see how it has an effect at LSU because they got to develop a new quarterback after Jalen Daniels leaves for the NFL. OSU and Washington State have settled with the departing Pac-12 teams. As you know, there's been ongoing litigation related to control of the conference, the money that's still tied to the conference. And this agreement comes in the wake of the Washington State Supreme Court decision last week not to review the lower court's decision to grant control of the Pac-12 to the board of directors of the two schools that are remaining. Part of the agreement, the 10 departing schools will forfeit an undisclosed portion of the revenue distributions over the rest of the 2023-24 schools year and provide specific guarantees against potential future liabilities. Let's see what else is here. This development allows all parties to move forward, and for OSU and WSU in particular, a better sense of what their financial picture will look like to begin the process of rebuilding the Pac-12, which looks to be their plan so far. I mean, their plan so far this year for football, next year for football, would be to play each other. They're playing, I think, 6 games as kind of an associate member. If you remember what Notre Dame has with the ACC, it's kind of a similar situation where they would play, I think, 6 games that won't count as conference games in the Mountain West. And then they've got their rivalry games with Oregon and Washington State, respectively, still on the schedule. And I think that would leave them just a couple of games to fill in with non-conference games. They'll get in, an FCS game in there probably. Now, some of the other schools, and I don't think it includes. Let me see. A lot of the other sports have come to a scheduling agreement. So football has with the Mountain West, as I said. They're also close to finalizing an agreement with the West Coast Conference, the WAC, to host most of its other sports, most notably men's and women's basketball. The Western Athletic Conference, if you're not familiar with it, has schools such as where are they in my? So again, this isn't a horrible conference. It's not what you would think, Oregon State and Washington State are used to playing, especially in men's basketball. This is Grand Canyon, Tarleton State, Utah Valley, California Baptist, Seattle, Stephen F. Austin, UT Arlington, Abilene Christian, Southern Utah. So it's kind of a catch-all conference that was built by teams that weren't welcome everywhere elsewhere and had moved up to Division I or FBS status. Not FBS status in football. They don't have it, but they do play Division I basketball and Division I in all other sports. So this is where they will end up for better or worse. For now, the plan is to rebuild the Pac-12, and what that looks like going forward is anybody's guess. Michigan receives NCAA notice of allegations of recruiting violations. Now, this to me is specifically about the COVID-19 recruiting dead period. This has nothing to do, and people are going to jump this to conclusions that this is about whatever you want to call it, Spygate 2. We're going to talk about Deflategate 2 tomorrow, by the way. I have some interesting thoughts on that. So this is about that and the self-imposed sanction Michigan put on themselves and Jim Harbaugh back in September. So nothing to do with the Spygate allegations, which were not levied at Jim Harbaugh, were leveled at the program. So don't misunderstand what's happening here. This is all about the buying a hamburger for a kid. What else? Mac Brown, Neil Codger. He sounds like me. He claims Dave Dorian's, the coach of NC State, by the way, post-game speech was classless. He's still mad a month later, following a post-game celebration in which Dorian used derogatory language to describe the Tar Heels. They had closed out the regular season with a victory over their rival, North Carolina. Dorian addressed his team inside the locker room, and his comments were caught on camera by the ACC network. He said it's been 1,460 days since those pieces of crap, which he did not say, beat us. That's all he said. I mean, come on, Mac, relax. I mean, the guys are fired up. There's emotion after a game. It's a big rivalry. Just stop. So Mac Brown says, I've never heard something like that before. Mac, what world do you live in? I'm disappointed. I thought it was classless. It's not true. We didn't play well in the game. We didn't coach well in the game. It's been very well documented, and I got that. But you don't call kids the pieces of crap, the other word for it. And I've addressed it with our team, and I apologize to them. These kids are one of the top academic groups in the America. Come on, Mac, relax, man. You got to let this stuff go and roll off. This is emotion speaking afterwards in a heated rivalry. Just stop. Nutty stuff, man. What do you got here, Rick? Oop, shit. Please tell me I didn't just close out all my windows like I did yesterday. I did not. Gonna get to the right mouse. As Mike Money said, there's a fucking surprise. Excuse me. I said I'll say that, but I won't say shit. Apparently, excuse my French. Again, but if you're talking about Harbaugh, I mean, again, we already knew this isn't new. We knew these allegations were out there, and by the way, the allegations are horse crap. The real punishment is here because of him lying. If you think the allegations and what the violations were are pertinent, you're wrong. They just aren't. He bought a kid a hamburger during the dead period. I mean, for crying out loud. And as for the rest of it, I'm not changing my stance. Get over it. There's always another side to stories, okay? I keep telling you, as far as the Spygate 2 thing, whatever we're calling it, signal stealing, code, you can steal code, but you can't steal signals. Whatever. The rules are stupid. Not saying I condone doing something against the rules, but again, I will say forever and again that everybody does it. And if you don't think that's true, John DeLon, where are you? You got your head buried in the sand. The SI article that came out very soon after this whole thing broke talked about OSU doing it and Penn State doing it and Purdue using their information against Michigan in the Big Ten championship, the game year before. Everybody's looking for an edge. It may not be that, but it's going to be something. Everybody's looking for an edge. Don't forget it. On all levels, high school. I still think, the rumors are still out there that Harbaugh's got a 5-year, $11 million per year contract offer hanging out there. I still think he's heading back to the NFL ahead of whatever posse's coming after him, because he's a polarizing figure. And if we don't like you, that's one of my problems. And again, I know I know Rick and I know some others will disagree with my take here, but it's very indicative to me of how we are as a society today, a country specifically, that if we don't like you, we're going to find something on you and we're going to get you. It's a gotcha. We're a gotcha society. And I don't like Jim Harbaugh, so let's find something. If I don't like, if Urban Meyer came back and coach, we'll find something because we don't like you. Gotcha. Watch out, Rick. It might happen to your coach someday. And then you're not going to like it. And then you're going to be screaming on the other end of the situation. You'll be screaming when it happens to your coach. Because, by the way, we're not running a squeaky clean situation down there in Georgia as far as institutional control. Just saying. And it's really not a knock on Kirby Smart. This is just a fact of life in the NCAA. You cannot control everything your coaches and everything your kids are doing. And I'm not making a comment whether Harbaugh, if this went on and Harbaugh probably knew about it, I'm not naive. But my point is this: if they want to get you, they will find something. If somebody gets it on their gets a haircut somewhere and wants Kirby Smart or wants Nick Saban, I'm not going to pick on your guy specifically, wants Lincoln Riley, they'll get him for something because there's something in every program. Just because you can't be on top of everything at all times. So I think Kirby Smart's responsible for some of the stuff that happened in the offseason, tragic accident, and a couple other incidents. No, I don't, because you can't be watching these kids all the time any more than I thought Nate Oates was responsible for the tragic murder that was committed by one of his players at Alabama basketball program. You can't watch these kids 24 hours a day. If they're bad people, they're going to do bad things. But you will be held responsible. And if people with enough power wanted Nate Oates out last year, he'd have been out. I didn't like some of the comments, but he's not responsible for what went on there. So, anyway. What else? We talked about Florida State losing most of their players. Oh, my God. It's awful, right? My gosh. Let's look at a couple of scores. I don't even have my I'm not going to put it up. We don't need the banners today. We're going to go as long as we need to go today. We got an hour left. If we go all the way, we might, because we're going to get into some basketball after the football. Let me just look real quick. Was there any other news I want to chat about real quick? NCAA allow multiple transfer players to compete in the fall. Big deal. You know what? I've changed my whole stance, or I shouldn't say. I've softened my stance on NIL and transfer portal. With all the BS that's gone down in the last 2 years with realignment, first of all, coaches not loyal to the universities or their players. They don't stick around. Even when they leave, they don't stick around to finish out seasons. Dino Babers gets ripped, right? For getting fired and not sticking around to coach his kids' last game and into their bowl game. Great performance the other night, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But why are we ripping the coaches who don't stay when they get a new deal and leave their team before? The James Madison coach going to Indiana. Either don't let these coaches move, or kids move, by the way, because we got the same problem with the transfer portal, right? Duke's playing in a bowl game today, and Riley Leonard's in Notre Dame, even if he was able to play. But I guess it's no different in opting out, but still. So coaches leave their kids and programs high and dry all the time. Now we've got universities with realignment. They're going where the money is. Why should the kids go where the money is? If you're not going to be loyal as a program, and I'll use USC and UCLA and the rest of those Pac-12 teams as my example. If you're going to take a 120-year-old conference and just blow it up with no regard to the conference rivals or the companions you had, I guess, in that conference for some of them over through that whole period or long periods of time, almost everybody except for Utah, Colorado, Arizona State, even in Arizona, have been there for decades. But you have no loyalty to them. You have no loyalty to your fan base. You have no loyalty to the players. You have no loyalty to anything except your bottom line, and you hightail it for the Big Ten. And this happened. This is true for the schools that left the Big 12, have left other conferences to go wherever else. I mean, it becomes a revolving door because, you get this conference gets depleted. I got to go steal from another conference. But anyway, with these programs having no loyalty to anybody, why should I get on the kids when they think they can get a better deal, whether it be more playing time, whether it be money, since the NIL is a thing and it's not going away? I've softened my stance. Go. Have fun. But please, don't leave before your college teams completed their season. That's not fair to your teammates. I don't care if it's the draft or transfer. Stick around. The draft, in some ways, I understand if you're playing in a BS bowl game somewhere, and you're projected to be a top 20 pick and you decide to sit out. What's Sam Hartman protecting himself from, though? He's going to be a day 3 draft pick, most likely, or later. So what's he protecting? Go play. Notre Dame gave you a chance. And again, found you some money with their alumni with NIL money, probably $1 million. Gave you a chance to come and possibly improve your draft status. That's the only reason you came to Notre Dame, Sam. But now that they go to a bowl game, whether it's a big one or not, and you sit out. And that's just one. I'm picking on Sam Hartman because he comes to mind. I'm talking about Notre Dame. The Florida State, I mean, they've got a handful of the best players on both sides of the football, and I think this Orange Bowl is going to stink. So anyway, and what we're stuck with a bunch of really bad bowl games, which we're going to look at in a second, and makes it very hard. By the way, I want to bet a game. I got to do a whole lot more research than I ever had to do because I've got to find out who's even playing in the game. I know that's not a major concern here, but we don't need 40 plus bowl games either. By the way, I don't need to watch a week of 6 and 6 teams playing each other. 20. How about 20? 15 or 20. Let's get back to some kind of reason. I don't need to be filling. The only reason we're playing these bowl games, and I'm going to get into them, we're covering the scores. The only reason we're playing these games is to fill ESPN's schedule, and they're paying these schools money. There's nobody at the games. Look at the games. There's no energy in the stadiums. The games are atrocious. Syracuse ought to be embarrassed with the way they performed the other night. I bet the under. And thank God Syracuse was so inept on offense because they gave up 45, and the game should have flown over. I'd want to play in a top bowl game, something to always remember no matter how your pro career goes. I don't disagree. I was talking about if we're playing like Georgia and Florida State's a perfect example here, right? And again, if I'm sitting out the Gasparilla Bowl last night, oh God, I have to laugh when I report the names of the bowls. I have to laugh. But to your point, Rick, I agree. I mean, it's a memory. You play your entire career, and I don't think, and I may be wrong, I don't think we've really had high-profile guys sit out if they're playing if they're part of the 4-game playoff. I don't think we've seen that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. But still, even if you're in the New Year's Day 6 games, you shouldn't be sitting out. You played your whole career to get on this type of stage. Used to matter a lot. Right? You remember back in the days of before 14 playoffs and even before the BCS, maybe. You watch the Orange Bowl and you watch the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl and the Cotton Bowl, and the top players on those teams all played. They may not even have a chance to play for a national championship, but they get a chance to play on a big stage for one last time. Maybe make an impression on pro scouts or a bad impression. You're sitting out. Part of me wonders whether you're just protecting yourself against injury or being exposed as not the great player you think you are. So, it's not a great situation. And maybe if we did away with some of these lower tier bowl games, we wouldn't have this. There's got to be some correlation here, right? To the ever expanding number of bowl games, 40 some now, to players not playing in these bowl games. And it's gotten to a point, it used to be if you're playing in, again, the Gasparilla Bowl, you might sit out. But you didn't sit out if you played in the Rose Bowl or the Orange Bowl or the Sugar Bowl. Now, unless you're playing in that Final Four, there's a good chance you'll sit if you're a great player. Nobody likes that. It's not good for anybody. It's not good for the player. To me, and again, if I'm a pro scout, that impacts me too. My opinion of you. You let your teammates down by not the guys you've been playing with for, well, maybe a year because these guys move everywhere. But in a lot of cases, 3 and 4 years, or 6 years, or 7 years. But when they get on a big stage, you let them down. As a pro scout, I'm going to tell, or forget about the scout. There's nothing to scout. If I'm going to tell an evaluator or a GM for a team getting ready for a draft, that goes into my profile for that guy. Let his teammates down in a big game by not showing up. Good morning, Carlos. Well, screw that. I don't care about the money, Carlos. I don't disagree with your comment. But you may affect the money you're going to make in the NFL by sitting out. I don't think guys get this. And maybe the NFL maybe they don't take it into consideration as much as I think they do or should. But I think it's a very good mark of a person's character, what they do in those types of situations. They're looking out for themselves and protecting their own situation and not caring a crap about their teammates. They've done battle with for at least 13 games, if not dozens and dozens and dozens of games. 100% right. Thank you. What about your teammates who went to war with? I agree, Rick. This is my whole point. So it points to a guy's character. So Carlos, he's not wrong, right? They think they're protecting the money. They think they're protecting their future. Well, I can tell you there's 100% chance you won't get hurt if you don't play. Guaranteed. What you don't know is how these guys will look at you as they're evaluating their draft boards. And if you don't think character means something, which it doesn't to a lot of teams in the NFL, I'll bow to that. But it does to a lot of them. And if character is high on a team's checklist, then you just hurt yourself. You cost yourself potentially millions of dollars by sitting out that game. I guarantee it's happened, and we don't have it documented, right? Don't care. Again, I still don't care, Carlos. Again, I don't think you're necessarily defending them. You're just giving them reasons they said. If you're defending them, fine. I say that. But I'm going to assume that you are not defending these guys for sitting out. If you are, then I will tell you you're wrong. Character means something. So does money. you know, your future matters, but your teammate futures matters. They don't look good in these bowl games. It affects their future, their draft status. Guys, you, as Rick said, went to war with for at least a season, if not 2 or 3 or 5 or 6 or 7 even today. I don't think they look at the bigger picture. I think they see the money, which you're not wrong about, Carlos, and they say, I'll play it safe. Well, you better hope there are guys like me out there evaluating the talent and the character of these guys. Just like you, Kenny, and I'm still friends with guys I played with 50 years ago. Agreed. Because you create a bond with people. That's why sports are important. Sports are important to building character. I've said this 100 times, right? That I'm the person I am today, and I think I'm a pretty good person. I've been a very good employee for the people that I work for and continue to work for because of sports, because of what was instilled in me as far as taking responsibility, character, looking out for my teammates. You don't think this will hurt their relationship with players who are going to go out there and give their heart to Florida State? Let's use Florida State again as an example with all these guys opting out, besides the fact that their star quarterback can't play. If I'm a guy whose draft status is hinging on how well I play in this bowl game and I look like crap because I'm going to get rolled by Georgia, it affects my relationship with that guy for the rest of my life. I may not even have one, where they might have had it for 50 years, as Rick is talking about. It don't matter to those guys. And the fact that that doesn't matter is a lot of what's wrong with this entire country and the fabric of this country, not just sports. I look out for number one when it comes to elections and such, right? Not sports, not in work. You're part of a team. Team, T-E-A-M. Man, it's so frustrating. Agreed. All right, let's look at some of the games so far, these bowl games. Where are we here? Let me get to, I don't know where we started. Where do we start the bowl games? No. These are still regular season games. I wanted to get them all. I probably should just pull up bowl games, right? Oh, here we go. Bowls. December 11th to whenever. Here's the games we've had so far. How excited have we been? Last Saturday, Iowa beats Georgia Southern 41-21. That's a 10-3 Iowa team against now a 6-7 Georgia Southern team in the, let's see, what is this bowl? Myrtle Beach Bowl. Who cares? Get rid of it. Let me see what you got here just for a move off topic here, Rick. A little bit off subject, but can you see letting a teammate perform like Pittsburgh quitters? No. Again, that's the NFL, but it's exactly what I'm talking about. The type of behavior we're talking about here might very well lead to exactly what's happening up there in Pittsburgh. Even Coach Cowher spoke out about what's going on up there. He defends Pittsburgh like crazy. Florida A&M beats Howard. Now this game, this Cricket Celebration Bowl, this is fine. A 12-1 Florida A&M against 6-6 Florida State. Two, I believe, historically black colleges, and look at it. It was a good game, 30-26. So again, at least this one has some merit. But then I get to Louisiana and Jacksonville State. 9-4. Jacksonville State wins 34-31 over now 6-7 Louisiana in overtime, and something called the R+L Carriers New Orleans Bowl. Nobody cares. Nobody. Oh, God. Miami and Appalachian State. This is actually a pretty good matchup in something called the Avocados from Mexico Cure Bowl. Pretty good matchup. 11-3 against 9-5. Appalachian State wins 13-9. Didn't bet any of these games yet so far, by the way. Fresno State, New Mexico State, not a bad matchup in the New Mexico Bowl. Esalata. I can't even say it. Again, okay. UCLA and Boise State. Boise State went in 8-5. Finished up 8-6 after UCLA beats them 35-22. Pulled away in the second half. This was a close game in the first half. In fact, UCLA was behind 16-7 at the half. Again, do I need to be watching this game? Probably not. Texas Tech and California in the Radiance Technologies Independence Bowl. At least the Independence Bowl is a name that I know. I'll allow that one to stay in my 20, 15-20. I'll allow the Independence Bowl to stay. And I did bet this game. I did bet Texas Tech in all transparency. Western Kentucky and Old Dominion. Old Dominion's a nice story. Just came into the NCAA a couple of years ago, FBS portion of the NCAA, and we're kind of in the position James Madison found themselves in this year, in the fact that they weren't postseason eligible because of just getting there, which is a stupid rule. When was that game? That was last week. I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to figure out the money I got coming this week. Anyway, Western Kentucky, Old Dominion. Nobody cares. It's the famous Toastery Bowl. Mac McGrath had a great point yesterday. We were finishing up the Mac and Jack show yesterday, and he talked about how Northeast Streaming Sports ought to sponsor a bowl game. I'm sure we can get our names on one of these bowls for not a lot of money. Barstool has one. The Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl. I did bet this game. UTSA and Marshall. I bet UTSA 3-0 in a bowl game so far, so I'm kind of happy. I did bet South Florida and Syracuse. Horrible game, by the way. Horrible game. Two horrible defenses. And South Florida was actually played really well. It's a bad defensive team. Syracuse can't score a point with their third-string quarterback. They played horrible. This is a mess up there. I bet the under, so thankfully Syracuse couldn't score any points. Because it was 55. So if they scored 10 points, I'm a loser. Georgia Tech beats UCF last night 30-17, a game I stayed away from. Again, two bad defensive teams. If I was going to play the game, I would have played it over, and I would have gotten beat badly. So I did not play it. So those are bowl games that we've had so far. Is there anything to get excited about here? Not even a little. Not even a little. Could be the Joe Cap Band Bowl. You must be talking about the California game. Again, I'm all for some of these schools. And by the way, it's important to the schools to get into these bowl games because they get to practice longer. If your season's over, you're done. You can't practice anymore. So it's important for them for next year to be able to get some reps for kids who maybe didn't play a lot and are going to be part of the program next year, which who even knows with the transfer portal the way it is. There's thousands of people in the transfer portal already, which we'll look at in just a second before I switch over to some basketball maybe. Coming up before we air again, next, where are the games today? Where's today's games? There we are. Today's games, we got Duke and Troy playing in the Birmingham Bowl, another one that I know, 76 Birmingham Bowl, which I know a little bit. Troy's a 7-point favorite here over Duke. Duke got off to a great start. They're playing without their quarterback, who's already gone to Notre Dame, and Riley Leonard. We talked about that, and we'll talk about maybe a little bit more when I get into the transfer portal. Arkansas State will play Northern Illinois. Arkansas State's a 3-point favorite here. Butch Jones, they're 6-6. They do get to a bowl game. Butch Jones was very solidly on the hot seat at Arizona State this year. Got himself off with a bowl game. Probably still on the hot seat for next year, though. They're a 3-point favorite. I'll take the dog here and take Northern Illinois. Not betting it. I'll tell you what I bet. I'm going to bet probably today, a couple games. James Madison, the big story this year, 11-1, undefeated for much of the year. They did win the Conference USA title. They'll play Air Force today in the Armed Forces Bowl. Well, definitely keeping the Armed Forces Bowl. James Madison's a 1-point favorite in this line. I think I have him 1.5 or 2 in the cigar box. I think I'm betting Air Force here today. I know Air Force ended up very badly after getting off to a great start themselves. I think they lost 4 of their last 5, something like that. But I like Air Force today in this game. Georgia State and Utah State, 2 6-6 teams. Again, we've got a plethora of these games in the famous Idaho Potato Bowl. Flip a coin. I'm going to take the points here too and take Georgia State. Utah State's a 2-point favorite. Not betting it. South Alabama and Eastern Michigan. I guess this is South Alabama's a 17-point favorite. I'll take the points and take Eastern Michigan. Utah Northwestern. This is an interesting game for me now. I finally get to an interesting game. This is in the Las Vegas Bowl, the SRS Distribution Las Vegas Bowl. Congratulations to the Northwestern team for getting to this bowl game in the first place. It's an interesting matchup. Utah is a touchdown favorite. I do like Utah to win this game and cover, but Northwestern is going to have some emotion, I think. They're going to come out here ready to win. A great year for them, 7-5. I've been mocking 6-6 and 7-5 teams in bowl games, but with everything Northwestern had to go through this year, kudos to them. I'm going to bet Utah, I think, in this game, though. So there's my 2 bets. San Jose State is a 9.5-point favorite over Coastal Carolina in the Hawaii Bowl, the Easy Post Hawaii Bowl. I don't want to give the sponsors' names even in these updates. This is a tough one. Coastal Carolina is without McCall, their quarterback, as he's transferred out to North Carolina State, I think. And San Jose State gets the big. I'm going to have to take lay the points here, 9.5. San Jose State wins this game. And then it's the games that are coming up before. I think there's only a couple other games. Wednesday. I guess I'll touch on the games Wednesday before we come on. Tuesday, Bowling Green. We finally get to some matchups that are okay. In the Quick Lane bowl game, which is just not a great matchup. Minnesota, 5-7, by the way. To my point, you don't even have enough teams that get bowl eligible to fill the 40 plus bowl games. Stop. Minnesota is a 3.5-point favorite. I'll take Minnesota in this game. Rice and Texas State, 6-6 against 7-5 in the First Responder Bowl. Texas State's 5.5. I'll take Texas State. Good story this year. Beat Baylor. Beat some good teams. One of the better mid-majors out there. In a game I do have some interest in, the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. These 2 teams could have played in a better bowl. Kansas and UNLV. UNLV had a very good year out in the Mountain West. Ended up losing the conference championship late to Boise State, who bounced back after firing their coach. KU's a 13-point favorite here. I'm going to take the points. I love Kansas State. I might go the over, 66.5. If I bet this game, and there's a very good chance I will, it'll be taking the points in 13 with UNLV. And Wednesday, I'll touch on the games that are going to be played in the afternoon before we come on live. The Military Bowl presented by. So we have an Armed Forces Bowl and a Military Bowl. I got to keep them both, I guess, to be consistent. Virginia Tech and Tulane. Love Tulane in this game. Virginia Tech is a 10.5-point favorite. Tulane, some guys opted out. I believe Mike Pratt has opted out of this game to protect his draft status, which is why Tulane is probably the big dog. Tulane lost 2 games this year, guys. One to Ole Miss in a game Pratt missed, and they kept it close. Virginia Tech is not nearly as good as Ole Miss. And to SMU in the conference championship game, a very good SMU team who just missed playing in that New Year's Day 6 group. So North Carolina will play West Virginia in the Dukes of Mayo Bowl. Ugh. Again, a couple of mediocre teams. I probably the over is my bet here. It's 54.5 in this game. Then we'll talk about. We got an interesting matchup with Louisville and USC that night. USC with just a tremendous meltdown here the second half of the season. Lincoln Riley may find himself squarely on the hot seat if he doesn't turn this thing around quickly. Louisville with a decent game. They're a 7.5-point favorite here. We know Caleb Williams is not playing. Some of the guys have opted out for USC. I'll make a pick maybe during the show next Wednesday. Got to see more who's playing. And Texas A&M and Oklahoma State, not a horrible game in the Texas Bowl. That's at 9 o'clock that night. Texas A&M is a 2-point favorite. I love Mike Gundy, so I'll probably be betting him as a dog. So and we got some games coming up next Thursday. We got some decent games finally. We get into the Pinstripe Bowl should go away. The Fenway Bowl should go away. The Pop-Tarts Bowl should go away. The Alamo Bowl, again, has some history. We'll let that stay. Tigers, the Sun Bowl's got some history. That can stay. Now we're getting into the ones that can stay. Gator Bowl, Liberty Bowl, Cotton Bowl. Those are going to be played on Friday the 29th. We'll get into the matchups next week. The Peach Bowl can stay, obviously. That's part of the rotation in the playoff, by the way. Ole Miss will play in that game against Penn State. Good game. Music City Bowl. This has got into a primetime spot. Not a big fan here. I'm eliminating Music City Bowl. Sorry, Nashville. But don't take offense. The Orange Bowl obviously stays. The Arizona Bowl can go. The real, what is this? The ReliaQuest Bowl can go. Fiesta Bowl stays. Citrus Bowl stays. Then obviously we've got the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl, which will stay. There you go. I just eliminated half the bowl games for you guys. Hope you're happy. What do we got here? I'm sure you'll watch the Pinstripe Bowl. I'll watch it. Yes. Do I have a lot of interest in Miami and Rutgers? Not really. Miami doesn't have a quarterback. Van Dyke's already gone off to Wisconsin. The second string quarterback broke his arm in the second to last game of the year. Rutgers, Greg Schiano did a really good job, I think, there. That's as good as Rutgers is going to do in the Big Ten. Rutgers ought to be playing the AAC or someplace like that, and they'd be very competitive and would have a chance to win that conference. They're never going to win the Big Ten. They had a pretty good year this year. I am working next week. I could get, technically I'm working and there's not a lot going on. I could certainly sneak away and work, bring my laptop with me, but Jim Barringer offered me the press credentials for that game. And he'll be on tomorrow, by the way. Talk some hockey and some college football, but yeah, I'm not going to go. I think I might be getting together with my dad for lunch. But it would have been neat to sit in the press box and watch this game. And I don't know. I could still change my mind if Jim still has the offer open. We don't know. But as far as the game goes, Rick, it's got to go. Pinstripe Bowl, Fenway Bowl on the out list. I'm going to fix this game yet. Again, great point. One of the reasons I like Air Force today, I don't know who's playing for James Madison. I got to look a little deeper at that game. But I do like Air Force right now because it's a really good team, a well-coached team, and no opt-outs because the military academies, what are they going to do? They don't opt out. They stick by their teammates. They have character. I hope all of them do. Anyway, I want to look quick at the transfer portal. There's so many players in this transfer portal. It's unbelievable. What I do with that? Here it is. So here's the transfer portal. There are, can I export this freaking thing? Should I export this thing? What if I go all the way to the end? This is all of the players. How do I export the whole thing? I want to see how many are in here. There's thousands. Can I go to the last page? We're going to concentrate on quarterbacks and whatnot, but coach, school, conference. This is showing 133. I must have it. I think there's that many quarterbacks in the, but I didn't. I know there's more than 133 in here. This is really kind of weird. So, the coaches, what happened? Where'd it go? Now I lost the damn thing. That darn it. Hang on one second. I wanted to look at this because there's some big names that have already moved. Transfer portal. Come on. God darn it. I closed my I'm trying to get the thing to filter correctly and it wouldn't do it. So any thoughts? Listen, and again, I've changed my thoughts a lot on the transfer portal. I'm okay. Here's the one I had. I had a different screen up. I think it was coaches. So they had 133 coaches on the hot seat, by the way. No, they just have all the coaches ranked there. Sorry. So I can't export this. Let's go by position. Let's look at quarterbacks. Here's some of the updates, okay? I won't do them all. Guys that we know, Casey Thompson, who's been in a couple times. He's entered, has not moved yet. He's leaving Florida Atlantic and going somewhere. Chubby Purdy, don't know if he's related to Brock Purdy, but he's in the transfer portal, leaving Nebraska. I'm looking for some big names here. Braylon Braxton is entering, leaving Tulsa. Chandler Morris is leaving TCU. Big bust this year. Remember, Chandler Morris lost his starting job to Duggins last year. We know what happened after that. He came back this year. There was high hopes for TCU, maybe being able to have at least some of that success this year in a very poor year for TCU. KJ Jefferson from Arizona has entered the transfer portal. He'll be an interesting guy to see come in. Keep Ohio State in mind when it comes to some of these guys. They have no quarterbacks right now. McCord has transferred out. The backup quarterback is transferring out. Big surprise when McCord going to Syracuse, by the way. But KJ Jefferson, maybe Ohio State. Larry Robinson leaving UCF. I'm sorry, leaving Army. There you go, Rick. We got a transfer guy leaving Army. We don't normally see that. I'm looking for some. Malik Murphy, we talked about, is committed now to Duke, leaving Texas to go to Duke and replace Riley Leonard there. And he'll play for Manny Diaz, the new coach at Duke. Looking at some other guys that have already moved to. Gunnar Gundy is leaving his father's team at OSU and going somewhere else, which I find kind of interesting. A couple other guys have already entered. I'm trying to get to some bigger names. I probably could have filtered this better, but I do know that Cam Ward is in this, by the way. Speaking of Miami earlier, Miami is very high and chasing very, very hard Cam Ward, who's leaving Washington State after 1 year there. Tyler Buckner is leaving Alabama. He's going back to Notre Dame. I read yesterday. They still have a question mark here in the portal. He's going back to play lacrosse at Notre Dame. He left Notre Dame to go to Alabama. If you remember, to follow Tommy Rees there. It did not work out well for him there, as we all know. I'm looking. There are so many names in here, guys. That Drew Pine, former Notre Dame quarterback who went out to Arizona State, as we know, is now transferring again out of Arizona State. See, there's nothing to stop these guys. I haven't even gotten to Riley. We know Riley Leonard is going to Notre Dame, which I think is going to be huge. But I know Kenny Gifford is really not in love with the guy. I think he's got great potential. Just got to stay healthy. I like the fact they're bringing back the old offensive coordinator to work with him. Did some good coaching up there for years under Brian Kelly. He's going back to work with his old friend Marcus Freeman. I think that'll be good. Dylan Gabriel, we talked about going to OU. Oregon, from leaving Oklahoma, excuse me. The rumors are between $1.5 and $2 million for Dylan Gabriel in that deal. Sam Levitt leaves Michigan State. A lot of guys getting out of Michigan State, man. Kyle McCord, I mentioned, is committed to Syracuse. Big surprise there. Nebraska was in the mix there. Some other bigger schools in Syracuse. Syracuse is going to need a lot more than Kyle McCord to turn this thing around, but that's a good step in the right direction for their first-year coach for sure. Didn't plan on going. Is there Cam Ward we talked about? Boy, look at this. I haven't even reached the end. DJ Ugalele is leaving Oregon State. He's going to transfer the second time in 2 years. Riley Leonard, we talked about. Grayson McCall is left. He's going to sign with NC State, as I mentioned. That's a good signing for both these guys. I think Grayson McCall and North Carolina State and the ACC is a team to watch out for. Early prediction there. Boy, there's so many guys in this transfer. This is just quarterbacks, guys. Tyler Van Dyke is committed to Wisconsin out of Miami. Will Howard is going to SC. I heard this. And I was sorry I couldn't get on the show Wednesday night because when I heard this rumor, Will Howard's a really good quarterback. Played really well at Kansas State. Can run the ball a little bit. Has some trouble with accuracy now and again. This guy, Lincoln Riley, may turn into a superstar. So keep an eye on Will Howard next year. And the problem is he doesn't play defense. Oh, God. More players. These guys all had opted out by this 11-14. That's it. Gavin Rupp is the last one. Rutgers. So interesting. There's some of the guys that are transferring already in the quarterback situation. And some of these teams, huge amount of players transferring. Colorado's got a bunch of kids transferring out. New changes to the coaching staff out there. Lots to look forward to here in this coming season. Anthony Price, I see, is with us here. Where'd my did I drop my the mouse went flying again. Sorry, let's get to can you transfer from Army? Apparently you can, because they've got a quarterback. I can't remember seeing Robinson transferring out of Army. So very interesting comment there. Good morning, Anthony, by the way. Former Texas quarterback going to Duke. Yes, Malik Murphy. We talked about that as I started this. God, there must be 200 quarterbacks in the transfer portal. Oh God! So yes, and I think Malik Murphy. I think that's a great move for Duke and Manny Diaz. ACC's there for the taking, man. You know. Let's pivot a little bit. Let's talk some college basketball. What do you say about that? Want to look at the rankings at least. A couple stories that might be going on there. If I can get to it. Whatever. That'll work, I guess. We swing around college basketball. Want to get going again. I know a lot of you guys are not as big a college basketball fans as you are college football fans, which is certainly understandable. I like the sport. It gets more exciting for me once league play starts, which we're just kind of getting into. We'll go through the top 25 here. Some big winners and losers this past week. I think I lost my rankings. I did so much jumping around here earlier. I lost the things I had set up. So Purdue remains number one. Actually, they moved back to number one. Since our last show, they've fallen out and they've gone back in. They move up 2 spots to number one. I would go by the AP poll again as a rule. Kansas, come on, Billie Jean, get out of here. I'm so tired of stuff popping up on my screen. They wouldn't even let me. Oh, you're killing me here. All right, I'll scroll down here below you. Houston is at number 3 with 8. By the way, first place votes are scattered a bit. 48 for Purdue, 6 for Kansas, 8 for Houston. Arizona falls down 3 spots to 4. UConn stays in the same spot at 5, the defending champions. Marquette, who I like a lot. Shaka Smart's done a great job there. They're going to be a force in the Big East this year. And they're 9-2. Both are losses to top 15 teams at the time anyway. I like this team a lot. Oklahoma, 10-0, a big surprise so far this year. Up 4 spots to 7. Tennessee is up 4 to 8. They're 8-3. They already got 3 losses, and they're at number 8 in the country. Kentucky trying to get back into the relevant category here. They're up to number 9. They jump 5 spots. You got a couple big losers here this week. Baylor loses and drops 4 spots. Carolina, 7-3, drops 2 spots. Creighton with a loss the other night in the Big East, drops 4 spots. Illinois goes up 3. Florida Atlantic, number 14, one of last year's, along with San Diego State, one of last year's Cinderellas, going to the Final Four. 9-2 again this year, and number 14 in the country. Gonzaga, steady. They did drop 5 spots this week. They're 8-3. It usually takes Gonzaga about 4 months to lose 3 games. Colorado State, still a surprise. Started out 10-1, and they're still 10-1, and they did move up a spot. BYU, the same record, or they move up a spot. Clemson finally loses, and they drop 5. Texas and James Madison. James Madison, what a turnaround in football and basketball the same year. This team's off to a 10-0 start. You look at their out-of-conference record, and it's not very scary, okay? They haven't beat a lot of good teams. So it'll be interesting to see when they start playing some league games. But congratulations to the James Madison football team and basketball team for having a big resurgence this year. Duke, back in the top 25 at 21. They're 7-3 under John Shire in his second year. Virginia, 9-1. Surprisingly, sitting at number 22. Memphis under Penny Hardaway, up 3 spots, getting into the top 25. 8-2 they are. Wisconsin drops 1. And Ole Miss, big surprise, 10-0, up 1 spot to number 25. Dropping out, my Miami Hurricanes and Northwestern. Comment. Put the wrong thing up here. Just can't work them all. What do you got here? Rick, love college basketball. Prefer it to the new NBA. The NBA is just like, I've talked about the NBA so little. We'll try to talk about it again tomorrow. But I just have a hard time getting into the games. Playoffs are different. Playoffs are much different. But you play in-season tournaments. You do stupid stuff. You don't play defense. It's an isolation game. College basketball has changed a lot as well in that regard. But it's still much, and the kid's not sticking around, make it harder. And it's a coach's league, the NCAA, but I like that. Rick Pitino being back, you can think whatever you want about Rick Pitino. You want to know what's going to happen with Rick Pitino? He's going to turn St. John's around. He's already off to a good start this year, which we'll talk about here in a second. But it's a coach's league, man. And that's a lot of fun for me. I follow Miami, but I like good stories when it comes to college. I'm not jumping. I'm not a bandwagon jumper of any sort. There's a lot of leagues to go through here, so most of the leagues have not started in conference play. So I'm going to go through quickly, and I'll tell you whether I want to talk about a surprise or a disappointment in these leagues, and you can certainly talk about any teams you want to talk about this year coming up. Rick, who's your favorite team in college basketball? Is it Georgia again? Certainly not a hotbed of college basketball these last few decades for sure. But we can talk about that. Anthony, I don't know who you follow in college basketball, but I'd certainly like to know. And anybody else that's here with us today, feel free to comment about college football, college baseball, basketball, anything. related to that, you can feel free to pop in on. And if you have other comments about other sports, get on the show tomorrow. Sunday Stream of Consciousness. We cover everything. We will talk about everything under the sun. I even got into politics last week. My bad. Shouldn't have done that, but I break my own rules sometimes. The Atlantic Sun, I'm not going to get into this conference a whole lot right now. Something we'll talk about later on. The American East, a little bit of a local flavor here because you do have Albany there. They're off to a 7-6 start. Coach Killings there is probably in a one of those Juwan Howard zero tolerance years because of some it's just situations he had go on the last couple of years. This is not a bad conference. Remember, UMBC was the first 16 ever to beat a 1 when they beat Virginia here a couple of years ago. So this is not a bad conference. Vermont is probably the prohibitive favorite as usual. The American Athletic Conference, who we like a lot, they have not started conference play yet. We talked about Florida Atlantic, who moved to the AAC this year, off to a 9-2 start. We'll see how they do once they hit conference play. It's a little bit different animal for them. Because you've got some decent competitors here in Memphis and Tulane. SMU has a good team. Wichita State has had good teams different times through the years. Big disappointments off the top of the year, probably Temple at 6-6. And maybe the big surprise would be maybe Tulsa at 8-3. The A-10, again, an underrated conference in my mind when you've got Dayton and you've got Davidson, who's played well there. St. Bonaventure's had some good years recently. VCU's had some good teams. I would say VCU's probably the biggest disappointment so far there at 7-5. And maybe the big surprise is George Washington at 10-2, George Mason at 10-2 in non-conference play. Now, if we were to dissect these, teams' schedule, I mean, we probably would not find a lot of quality there. So UConn, I forgot Rick was so I wasn't sure when you were rooting for UConn last year, Rick, whether there was specifically an Andre Jackson thing or it was a consistent fandom for you. I'm a Marquette fan, so while I root for Miami, I will also, and you know how I feel, you shouldn't root for two teams. I also have a strong feeling, and I guess I would say Marquette is my number one team. You'll see me in Miami shirt because I don't have any Marquette wearables. Miami's more of I'm married into it thing, and I'll root for them to win. But my team would still be Marquette because I grew up loving Al McGuire. The Atlantic Coast Conference has started playing games. One game played by pretty much everybody. Clemson, Miami, Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, North Carolina State, and North Carolina all won. Wake Forest, BC, Pittsburgh, Syracuse off to a 9-3 to start under Adrian Autry. Not too bad. Duke, Florida State, Louisville, and Notre Dame all lost. By the way, Louisville, Kenny Payne, we'll start talking about coaches in trouble. Kenny Payne at Louisville has won 6 out of 4. I think he's 6-40 since he got to Louisville. He went there. He was a head assistant for years at Kentucky for John Calipari. Went to the Knicks and worked for Coach Thibodeau there. Was supposed to be the guy to turn things around in Louisville. He got the dreaded vote of confidence this week, so things don't look so good there. I think the big disappointment here in this conference, he's 5-7, by the way, before the conference play started, 5-6 before the conference play started. Big disappointments. I'll say Florida State and Notre Dame and the surprises as early as it is. Maybe Georgia Tech at 8-3. New coach there and Damon Stoudemire trying to turn them around after they've really been in the pits for decades after some good basketball teams under Bobby Cremins there in the 80s and mostly in the 80s, maybe the early 90s. Big 12, Houston getting there for the first year. They're undefeated before they go into Big 10 or Big 12 conference play. Houston's just really a good team, third in the country. Calvin Sampson, great coach. Just stay out of trouble, Calvin. That's all I can say. Kelvin, sorry. BYU, probably the big surprise here so far, I would say, at 11-1. Their first year in conference as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how Houston and BYU, if they hold up once conference play starts. And Cincinnati's 10-2. So some surprises there. The disappointments would be probably West Virginia at 4-7. Kansas State, they're 9-3. So everybody's really got a great out of conference record except Oklahoma State and West Virginia. The Big East, the big news here is St. John's and Rick Pitino. He's got them 8-3 and 1-0 in the conference. Great job by Rick Pitino. He rebuilt this roster as he did Iona. You can think what you want about Rick Pitino. Great basketball coach and great at turning programs around. So I see that happening here. Marquette 10-3, as I said, ranked number 6, 1-1 in the conference so far. This is going to be a good conference this year. You've got, I think, Providence, St. John's, Villanova, Marquette, UConn, Creighton, Xavier, all with a chance to win this conference, I would say, and get a leg up in the NCAA tournament. Big Sky, we won't jump too much into that. Nothing to get excited about there yet. Big South, nothing to get excited about. Big Ten has started playing. Indiana gets off to a 2-0 start in conference, which is good. Michigan State, surprisingly, they're the big disappointment here. They're ranked, I think, in the top 5, a top 10 at least, going into the season. They're 7-5 overall, 0-2 in the Big Ten. This is the second time in 2 years, I think, we've talked about disappointment. And I love Tom Izzo. And I wonder if maybe things aren't starting to maybe creep to a halt there. Iowa also, with Coach McCafferty, off to a slow start as well. We'll talk about some of the local connections and local teams as well as we go through the season. The big surprise here might be Indiana at 9-3, 2-0 in the conference. You would expect the rest of these teams to kind of be where they are, I think. Big West, we won't dive into too much today. The Coastal Athletic Conference, which I'm not going to dive too much into that today. Conference USA, Liberty in the league for the first time, 10-3, doing very well as they did in football. We'll see what happens when league play starts. I would call them one of the surprises here. Probably the biggest disappointment would be Middle Tennessee at 5-8. Only one independent team this year in college basketball, by the way. That's Chicago State. The Horizon League, not going to jump too much into that yet today. The Ivy League, Princeton off to an 11-1 start. No big surprise there. I would say if we're going to look at a disappointment, it would probably be Penn at 7-5. Metro Atlantic, we've got St. Peter's. You got a lot of local flavor here in Siena. 2-10 overall. Horrible start for Siena. They are 1-1 in the conference. So you've also got Iona in this league. Lost Coach Pitino. They're 5-7. St. Peter's, I think they won this league last year, 5-5. No, they didn't win this league. Iona won the league, but they had a shot to win it. And remember, St. Peter's did some damage in the tournament 2 years ago. Marist at 7-3, leading the way right now. Overall, 2-0 in the conference. Mid-American, I'm not going to get too excited about anything I see here. Probably the biggest disappointment here is going to be, I'm going to say Miami of Ohio at 5-6. I haven't started league play yet. And the big surprise is Akron at 8-3, I would say. Mid-Eastern, we won't get into that one. Missouri Valley, Indiana State. Not a lot of relevant seasons. They've had some good teams, but nothing too consistent since Larry Bird left. They are 11-1, 2-0 in the league. So that's a big surprise there. And I would say the biggest disappointment, Valparaiso at 4-8, 0-2 in the league. Mountain West, Colorado State, big surprise there, 11-1, as we talked about. I would say they're the big surprise. And the big disappointment, I would say both Fresno State and UNLV at the bottom of this league at 6-6 and 5-5. We won't get into the Northeast or the Ohio Valley today. Pac-12, Arizona off to a 9-1 start. League play has not started. Colorado at 9-2. Washington State maybe a surprise at 9-2. And at the bottom, UCLA 5-6. They're the big disappointment in non-conference play. Patriot League, owned by Colgate the last few years. Bad conference, out of conference start here, 6-6. But they play a fairly tough schedule outside of their conference. Southwest Conference, Alabama, 6-5. I would say that's a poor start for them. Auburn off to a 9-2 start. The big surprise, I think, would be Florida at 9-3. Maybe Kentucky getting back to some relevancy out of conference, 9-2. The disappointments, I'm going to say Texas A&M at 8-4, and maybe Missouri at 7-5. We won't get into Southern Conference. We won't get into that one. Sun Belt, James Madison, I said 12-0, ranked for the first time in forever, maybe since Lefty Drizel was there a gazillion years ago. The big disappointment here, I would say, would be Coastal Carolina at 3-8, maybe even Old Dominion at 4-7. And we wish our coach a quick recovery. By the way, he had a heart attack out there at the Maui Classic, so we hope he gets better quickly. West Coast Conference, Gonzaga, 3 losses already, 15th. They're very consistent, but I think they'll bounce back and win this league. The big disappointment in this league has got to be St. Mary's at 8-5 to start their season. And then the Western Athletic Conference, where those teams will end up, that we talked about, Oregon State and Washington. Grand Canyon starts out at 10-1, but probably a little bit of a surprise based on their last couple of years. And Stephen F. Austin might be the disappointment at 7-5. So we'll check out your final comments as we get ready to close out the show today. I did have a few other things to talk about, but no time to get into it, as we'll be going off automatically on Roku at 10:30. Anthony says North Carolina used to be a top 5 team. The last couple of years, they've been falling. They weren't even a top. They did get to the Final Four 2 years ago, don't forget, in Hubert Davis's first year. They were playing well early this year. They were in the top 15. And they've stumbled a little bit the last couple of weeks. Conference play is what's going to matter in the ACC, right? I think this is a pivotal year for Hubert Davis, just like it is for John Shire at Duke. As some of the other schools in the ACC have started to play better basketball, like Miami, like Florida State, not the last couple of years, but Clemson's played better. Pittsburgh played better last year under Jeff Capel in a year that he was particularly on the hot seat. Almost won the league regular season title before finishing third. Rick travels to Syracuse on occasion to see them play and spend the weekend. See Syracuse play or see Syracuse and UConn? Syracuse, listen, good start under Adrian Autry. Tough job. It's getting hard to recruit to Syracuse. That's what Jim Boeheim lost. Again, Joe Girard, by the way, doing very well. He had transferred to Clemson, playing good basketball down there, but he's not the number one guy. He can't be your number one guy on a Power 5 conference winner. When Buddy Boeheim and Joe Girard are your number one guys, it's not a good situation, guys. And Adrian Autry so far out of conference, 9-3. Let's see what happens when Big East or ACC plays. I wish they were in the Big East. I miss the old Big East. So anyway, guys, we're getting ready to wrap it up here. I appreciate everybody's contributions today. Rick, Anthony, Carlos, all of you who watched and didn't feel the need to comment, please do next time. We love the comments. We love to play off the comments. If you're looking for something else to talk about today, pop in tomorrow, because on the Stream of Consciousness, we'll talk about anything. I might even talk Sterling Rules football tomorrow. You never know what we're going to talk about on Sunday with the Stream of Consciousness. So show up at 8:30 tomorrow morning right here on TGI Sports Talk, Let's Talk Sports, and Northeast Streaming Sports. Also on the Roku channel live, Northeast Streaming Sports, the Roku channel. Catch us on all of those outlets. Guys, been a great day. Keith Engel for TGI Sports Talk's College Sports Huddle. Have a great day. Enjoy some football.